Education in Nigeria is being threatened, from high insecurity plaguing the country to dilapidated learning infrastructure down to systemic failure in school curriculum. The number of school dropouts continues to increase on a steady and rapid rate. Across many communities, the promise of education is fading. Young people are walking away from school. Understanding why youth drop out is the first step towards rebuilding a system that can protect their future.
Hello and welcome to 360 Youth Dialogue, where we talk about issues affecting the youth. Like I always like to start, if it's affecting the youth, we are talking about it here on 360 Youth Dialogue because the youth also affects these issues directly or indirectly. Today we're talking about education. Our education is at threat when the system fails the youth, why there are many youth dropping out of schools at this particular point. And I have here with me Joshua Arogunyo. He's a social intervention specialist and he will do justice to that topic on education at threat. You are welcome, Joshua.
Thank you very much for having me.
So welcome. Okay, let's take an icebreaker question here. What was education like in your time, in your days of schooling? What was education like?
It's not too long ago. I mean, I think I started primary school at 1991 or 1992. Finished around 97, 97, 98. Got into secondary school 99. So I wouldn't say it's that long. But one of the things I would say is that I think I'm privileged because I tasted the old school. Usually I say I tasted the old school and the new school, if you want to call it the new school, because how education was, the Ali and Simbi and all those kind of things. Yes, that's my generation, you know. Okay. Secondary school, as they goes to school, things fall apart. The African Night Entertainment, sequel Equency, you know, John Pepe Clark, Africa, My Africa. That was my generation. So yeah, education has actually evolved in all honesty because with the advent of, you know, I think one of the things that triggered and changed education, our current educational system right now is the fact that now you have social media that's come in, the internet is now available and the internet penetration has increased. So now it means that people are now using different tools to teach, to facilitate and aid learning. Instructional materials that we used to have teachers use cardboard papers to show us and draw diagrams and, you know, show them to us as pictures. That is gradually fading away. With a click of a button, a teacher can print a picture of anything and then demonstrate it in the class. Exactly. During our time, we had practicals and we had alternative to practicals. Now you don't need to have an alternative to practical because materials are readily available. Even if you don't have it in class at the material point in time, you could actually show a video and use a video to demonstrate. So, I mean, things have changed really for the good, for the better. But nevertheless, when you still look at what can be done, what can be achieved, we still have a long way to go because for us to compete globally, even as a nation, it means that we need to put our efforts, make more investment in education, prioritize education, and make sure that we see the dividends of education.
And thank God you've already given me that gap of, you know, old education and then the new education. In your comparison, which would you say is more, what's the comparison between them? Because a lot of people would say old school, old times, like the curriculum had more power, it was more effective, it suited that generation. And then we're looking at the new education, as you call it now. It's a whole different thing. We're looking at AI and the rest. What's your comparison?
So this it's not a comparison issue. It's about the philosophy of education. Now, this is how to look at it. Every country defines its philosophy of education.
Okay.
Because education is not an end, it is a means to an end, according to John Dewey. So government use education as a tool to facilitate or to project something. So for instance, when you look at an average Asian child, a child from China, a child from Korea, what subjects do you think they'll be good at? Probably mathematics, physics, science, robotics, because that's the philosophy of education of the country. It's that we want to be a giant in this area. So what is the philosophy of education for Nigeria? The philosophy of education of Nigeria determines what the curriculum will look like, because it wants to produce human capital that will meet this. So that, for instance, when you meet an average Nigerian, you should know he should be good in this.
Exactly.
That is how education is. So that philosophy is supposed to run a particular span of time. After a particular while, it is expected that it should be reviewed, especially as society evolves. Right now, you're talking about ending of we entered into the fourth industrial revolution. Now we're even thinking of entering into the fifth industrial revolution. Unfortunately, we are still using the curriculum that was used for the second, not even, let's say, the third industrial revolution. So it means that there is a gap. So the gap is not a generational, the education that was used for this generation versus the education used in this generation. It's not so, because it has evolved and is evolving fast. Now we're talking about AI as an example, just to give you a picture about AI. How many of our schools have really done well in terms of robotics, which was actually far behind? So we have not even done robotics. Now we are in the AI scene. So it's about an educational system that is structured in such a way that as the society evolves, the curriculum is able to match up and meet up. So it's about, for me, the problem, the gap, really, is not about what this generation learned versus what that generation learned, because they were all taught in order to meet the prevailing needs of their generation. But the gap for me is, what does the philosophy of education of Nigeria say, and how does Nigeria want to raise human capital that will meet its needs and that will help meet the future needs of the country? So if Nigeria is going to be an engineering nation, for instance, it needs to raise the engineers homegrown. Otherwise, we'll be importing engineers from abroad to come and maybe work on our roads, to work on, to set up the facilities that we want to set up. So we need to start thinking inward in terms of how the philosophy of our education should look like. That will help define the kind of curriculum we're going to now design. And then the implementation of that curriculum is a different thing altogether.
So Nigeria can actually design its own curriculum for its own.
There's a curriculum called the Nigerian curriculum. Unfortunately, and this is usually I think it's lack of monitoring. I personally feel angry when I see a school running an American curriculum in Nigeria. When I see a school saying that we use British curriculum, it doesn't make any sense.
It sounds like, oh, this is the best school.
Because, I mean, this is how it is. The British curriculum is designed for British. That's why I say it is a question of the philosophy of education.
Exactly.
The British government said this is what we want our citizens to look like, and we have designed this curriculum to be able to build human capital, human capacity that will meet these needs. Now you carry that solution that was designed for the British environment and bring it to Nigeria. It can't work because the environment is not the same. It can't thrive here, right? So the seed has to be in the right environment for it to
thrive.
Yes, for it to thrive. And so and for me, it is wrong when we allow those kind of things, because what it means is that you're producing graduates that are not necessarily suitable for the environment to understand our problems, and so that they can think about indigenous solutions to those problems.
Indeed. Well spoken on that. I wouldn't have thought of Nigeria curriculum being a good seed for Nigerians here. And then you said something about, if we have to build our own engineers, we have to build them homegrown. What about they go abroad? A lot of young children, their parents japa, and then they take them abroad, they learn engineering, and then come here to implement. Do you think that works too?
There is no guarantee that a child will study abroad and then come back to Nigeria. There is no guarantee. It only happens maybe 10% of the case, where a child leaves Nigeria, goes study abroad, and then decides to come back home to come and do something. Most times when they even come back home, it is that there is a solution and there's a market they've identified and they want to solve that problem. Usually it's the case, and that's 10% of all cases. So it means that what you end up doing is that you are exporting Nigerian products, and then you're sending them abroad, and then at the end of the day, there's this shortage will still be here. Now, this is how it should be. It should be, like I said, it still goes back to the philosophy of education. What is Nigeria has a philosophy of education. I'm not saying that we don't have. We have a philosophy, but we need to review the philosophy, because this is how it is. The philosophy was designed in such a way that, as at that time, Nigeria just got independence, and so this is kind of, we need a strong labor force, public service and all that. And that was why the cliche at that time was go to school, go and work, and then come and work for the government and all that. But things have changed, things have evolved. We need to start thinking about, okay, the new dynamics. And for you to have a philosophy of education of a country, the country has to have a 20, 30-year plan, because an average investment in education is 20 years. So for instance, when a child is born, if a child is born this year, at what age is that child going to start working? Right? Averagely 18 years. So you can see the investment of education has to be like 20 years before you start reaping the dividend on that. So it means that the country, Nigeria, needs to have a development plan of 50 years. Okay, this is where we want to be in 50 years. For us to be here in 50 years, we need to invest in this area of education, because we want to be here, or we want to be a strong engineering powerhouse. And for us to do that, we need to, our curriculum, you see how it goes. The National Development Plan will determine the philosophy of education of the country. We speak to the development plan. It will not affect the curriculum. It will not affect how you recruit teachers, how you train teachers, how many teachers you're going to train, and all that. It will determine how you are going to standardize your tests to make sure that the best of the best of the best. So, except maybe strategic intervention where you see state government send young people abroad to go and do a particular course and gain some skills and then come back. Yeah, state government do that a lot. Send them to China to go and learn maybe transport or whatever, and then they bring them back. So it's still, so they know that they are going on the sponsorship of the state government, and when they come back, they're expected to deploy this. That's a different case. But how long? That's not sustainable, because it's more like you're spending that money outside the country. You can invest that money inside. So that's how the dynamics is. It's about defining it. We don't have a long-term plan as a country. We don't, and that's what has affected our education. If we're a country that thinks 30, 40, 50 years, and the truth is that before you, whether you like it or not, you will get there. You will get to that 50 years.
True.
So how do we make government a continuum such that irrespective of whoever becomes president or governor, we know that this is our national development plan, and then we are going with it, and then all the development strides we are making is going in that same direction. That's how we can build our educational system.
Indeed. Irrespective of Nigeria having 40, 50 years plan, do you think our education system, our education on its own, is at threat?
So that's a very, very, very interesting question. Education in Nigeria, irrespective of whether you have a national development plan or not, is a threat right now. And there are three primary reasons why I'm saying so. One is that there's a negative perception about the youth, among the youth, about education right now. So cliches like who school help,
School na scam.
school na scam. These cliches speak volumes about the current perception of students, of young people, about education. That is very bad. Number two, the incessant cases of insecurity in our school system is also affecting our school. And not just insecurity, I would say social issues. Our social issues also affecting education. For instance, we have a high rate of out-of-school children. Depending on who you quote, if it is UNICEF 10 point something million, if it is UNESCO 23 million, we have this high volume of out-of-school children population in Nigeria. That is a threat. Then you have the third case, and the third case is the fact that we have a problem of either learning poverty. Learning poverty meaning that a child is supposed to be a primary 6 student will fail a standardized primary 6 test, but maybe will pass a primary 3 exam. So it tells you that in terms of learning, he's in primary 3, but in terms of chronological class, he's in primary 6. You have learning poverty as an issue. You have other minor things about, for instance, student retainership. So some children, when they get to primary 6, they drop out, or when they get to GS3 after junior YEC, they drop out. So it's an issue, and all these things affecting education, because it means that the number of people who graduate, I mean, you can see it also reflected in the university system.
Exactly.
Yeah, because the number of population of children that writes JAMB are not the same number of persons that, at the end of the day, get admission into the university. So there's that drop, that constant drop. So for me, these are the three cardinal prisms for which I look at education, and I feel it is really under threat. And why is it under threat? There are a number of reasons, but I think it's because government has not prioritized education.
In Nigeria?
Now, in Nigeria. Government has not prioritized education in Nigeria. Now, how do you look at this how did I come to this conclusion? Before now, And I think my own, I mean, when I was in primary school, I would say I saw that happen. Even at maybe up to secondary school level, I think I saw that happen. The children of the poor went to the same school with the children of the rich.
That's before now.
Before now, the federal government colleges were one case where you could find that, where you could find the child of a permanent secretary in your class, the child of son or a daughter of a minister in your class. We all attended the same school. So the shot out of poverty was for you to be brilliant and outstanding in your class. It doesn't matter what background you are from. Provided you can do well and excel, you stand a great chance to escape poverty. But now you have a great divide. That the child of the rich is in a class and the child of the poor attends a different school. And so what happens is that the poor is competing with the poor and the children of the rich are competing with the rich. And so those things that happens in the educational system, because it is the poor and it's not affecting the child of the rich, of course, which are most of the people who are our leaders, then they don't pay attention to these issues that are happening here within the environment of the children of the poor.
That's true.
So a classic example, an average Nigerian, will an average Nigerian send their child to a government nursery school or a government primary school? Where are the government primary schools? They would rather send their children to a place that they use zinc to carve a place and say it is a school. They would rather send their children there than to a private school that is called a private school where they even use bench or they even sit on the floor, than send a child to a government primary school. I'm using primary school as an example because government has lost the primary school. And they will tell you, I mean, scientists will tell you that the first 1,000 days of a child is the most important because that's where the neurons of the brains, all those neural links are created, is formed, because that's the most formative days of the child. So it's lost. So primary education, as far as government is concerned, is totally lost, right? Now, look at the secondary school system. How many of our government secondary schools are still living up to expectation? You see the gap. And the gap, why I'm pointing this out is to show you that because the children of the rich no longer school with the children of the poor, those in leaders don't pay attention to what is happening in this area, in these schools. So there's that big gap. That's why I say education is at risk. So it means that if a child now wants to compete and come out of poverty, he has to find a way
into the
school
of
the rich, which in many cases are very expensive. So education, I mean, using that as one example, and there are a whole lot of examples. How many government schools would you go to today? Government secondary schools you go to today, and you hear that a child repeated class maybe 2 times. I'll give a classic example. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I mean, I was practically on the field, monitoring what was going on. Schools were shut down for how many months? Schools were closed. But within the few weeks that schools were opened, they still finished the entire curriculum and wrote exam and passed everybody, and everybody moved from primary 1 to primary 2.
To the next class.
Everybody moved from GSS 1 to GSS 2. People moved to the next class. No. That's not how to, because education is both qualitative and quantitative. The two goes together, and you cannot rob Peter and pay Paul. It's the same thing that happens in universities. ASU was on strike for about 8 months, but the remaining 4 months they were still able to conduct 2 semesters.
Semester that is supposed to be 3 months.
That's the point. If you look at it, when I say education is at risk, there are different dimensions that you look at it and you agree that education is at risk, because education is both qualitative and quantitative. Quantitative is that there's a particular number of hours you are supposed to fulfill with a particular course for you to have been said to have been good at it. And qualitative in terms of the quantity of instruction, the amount of instruction that you need, the quality of instruction. Because it's not just about theory, there's the practical aspect of some of these courses that you need to have hands-on experience. So the qualitative aspect is also very necessary. So if you shortchange at quality and use quantity, or use quantity to shortchange quality, you are not having, so you now have a student that a graduate that went to school but school did not go through the
student. Okay, now let's talk about, you've made a point where the child of the rich and the child of the poor, that's demarcation actually don't make the government understand what really the child of the poor is going through. And that's why we have recurring issues in our education system and risk that are, should I say, uncountable going on in our education system, threatening our education system. Let's talk about Chibok girls. Now we have reoccurring issues,
Yeah.
incidents like that. This, for some people, have threatened the interest of young girls, of boys to attend school. Why should I go to school if in my community we get kidnapped, or in my community there are chances that I go to school and never come back to see my parent? Now, the number of dropouts continues to increase and students become disinterested in schools. Putting this side by side with reoccurring incidents, is there with Chibok, Dachip,
Dapchi.
and then now we have KB girls, and just of how many hours there's now Niger and Nasarawa. So you're seeing the reoccurring incident. Why is do you think because of this whole demarcation, that's why the government is not able to understand the risk these children face in schools?
So there are a number of ways to address that. It's not necessarily that government does not understand. Government actually understands. But sometimes you also have to look at it from the prism of return on investment.
Return on investment?
Yes.
How?
Because if governments invest money, I want to put it in a way that it will be easy for everybody to understand. How would you know that I'm a working governor? You will know I'm a working governor when I do certain invest in infrastructure that you can see, that are real infrastructure. So for instance, if I start constructing roads and building flyovers, for us in our balance, that man is working. But if I invest in education, the truth, like I said, investment in education, you see it 20 years after. But this man only has 4 years to prove himself. And after that, maybe seek re-election. And at the end of the day, cumulatively, he has 8 years to prove himself. So you see, the return on investment in education is longer. And so that's why investment in education is not necessarily a go-to for government, especially our public service holders, the governors, the governor, not necessarily the president, because the president has nothing to do with it, because education is on the concurrent list. The state government are supposed to take charge of it. As a matter of fact, even local government are supposed to take charge of it. So if you look at it in terms of return on investment, you will say that, okay, it's because the return on investment, especially in this political dispensation we are in, does not encourage government to make investment in education. That's on one hand. But on the other hand, there are certain quick fixes that we expect governments to do if we consider education very important. Like I said, imagine a generation, that this generation that we are in, that has 10 million out of school children, we continue that way. It means that we will get to a stage where those 10 million out of school children will become a nuisance to us. That there are certain things that those that are educated we understand, and those that are not educated will not understand. It's a sitting time bomb. And if a government is very proactive about this issue, what they will do is they will try to do certain quick fixes in that area of course, talking about security. Now, these recent cases of kidnappings that are happening in our school is also creating a form of discouragement from, making people not want to go to school. There have been several initiatives that government has set up, but it's not necessarily about the initiative. It's about swift response. Look at in Kaduna, some students in universities some university students were kidnapped. I don't know how the latest about them, but this has become a recurring issue. And I understand the vulnerability of school environment, that these bandits, or as the case may be, these terrorists will go to schools to kidnap children. But then initiatives such as this Safe School program have been set up since. It was not yesterday. But how far had it fared? What can we say? How many schools can we say, it was implemented here and we saw drastic improvement? What can we say of certain initiative of government in trying to curb the situation? Because nobody is holding government to account. Most times when these things happen, you see government press statements that we read, we're on top of the situation, we'll do everything that we can to get these children back. No, it's not enough, because that parent just lost a child. A child has been kidnapped. It's like your child goes out every day and you're expecting him by 3 o'clock, he's supposed to come back, and you not see him by 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 p.m. The child has not come back home. Do you think the parent slept well the previous night? Most parents will not sleep for 3-4 days. They will lose sleep because their children who they've sent to school to be educated, to become better citizens, have gone to school and have not returned. So it's not enough for government to say we will do our best. It's about holding people accountable. Okay, officer, DPO, police officer, We assigned you to this place. We asked you to do this. What happened? And if there's need to fire some people or sack some people, you sack them. It's like sending a message.
Exactly.
And everybody stands on their toes to make sure that what they are supposed to do, they do them well. So there are a lot of initiatives that have been rolled out since Chibok and up till now, but unfortunately, it seems not to have yielded the desired result. And unfortunately, it's affecting our perception about towards school. So, and it is a negative trend. Government needs to step up because it is government responsibility to provide security of the citizens.
That's right.
Parents cannot carry gun to school and be protecting their children.
That's
so it is government responsibility. Assure me as a parent that if I send my children to school, my child is protected. I will send my children to school. So that's where government needs to step in. And they need to step in with full force, with a show of force that they're in charge and not the bandits.
Just before we come to communities and parents, what really do you think makes schools very susceptible to conflict, being hostile to conflict, areas? Anytime there's conflict in any particular country now, you see school being at risk.
Yeah, it's because schools are very vulnerable. It's an easy attack. It's a light target for a number of factors. Most of our government schools are not fenced. They don't have perimeter fencing.
Okay.
And so most times they are located in a place where even if they do have perimeter fencing, it's usually low fence. The securities that are assigned to those places are usually maybe retired soldiers who are, seek employment, to serve as security, or just one person who is guarding the whole gate or just manning the gate, not necessarily monitoring the fences, the perimeter of the school. So that's basically what you have. And then, of course, it is usually a light target for maybe a terrorist to make a statement. If they want to make a statement, it's easy. Storm into a school with arms, with guns, and then take as many children as you can, because of the number of innocent lives, because they are children and they are innocent lives. They were not in the picture of the whole conflict. They don't even have an idea of what is going on. They're just there, to learn. It makes it easy for government to look in their direction. Maybe if they are making an agitation or they are trying to call, there's a case they are trying to make, it's easy. So that's why school environments are usually easy targets. And like I said, and because of that, it means that government is aware of this. It's not that government does not know. Government has more intelligence than I sitting here have. So government should know that because this is an easy target, they should mount more, especially in conflict zones. They should mount more security personnel. Or even if you cannot, of course, it will be very difficult or practically difficult for you to man a police officer in every school. But
that's
certain
roads. That's what the SAFE initiative demands.
Yes, it is. But there are weaknesses to it because what's our police strength? I hope you know that we have about 20-something states in Nigeria has some form of conflict or the other. And that requires police officers deployed in all these places. You look at the Southeast. Look at the Southeast. You have the unknown gunmen in the Southeast. You have bandits in the Southwest. You have terrorists in the Northeast. You have killings of bandits by killer headsmen in the North Central. So there's virtually no zone in Nigeria that does not have one form of conflict. How many police officers are you going to deploy? How many police officers do we have? And how many police officers will you deploy? Because this is not a case where you bring in the army.
But there are a lot of other security apparatus like the NSCDC and
That's
other
what I'm saying, combined together. Do you know the number of secondary schools we have in Nigeria, government owned? And that does not mean that the private secondary schools are not vulnerable to attacks. That does not mean that the private primary schools are not vulnerable to attacks. So if you begin to deploy one police officer per secondary school, and 50 bandits attack one school, you are leaving one police officer to face 50 people. So it's like I said, it's not the sustainable route to go. There are certain things that can be done strategically. Maybe certain roads to certain school areas, can have police officers, or certain checkpoints, so that should anything happen before the bandits will leave, police officers are quick to respond. That's strategic, making use of the resources but getting higher impact. That's better. But to have one police officer, how many police?
A whole school.
And then you have election circles here and there that they have to carry 16,000 police officers to go. It will be practically, you overstretch the police force.
That's right. And you made mention of the government taking responsibility to protect and ensure parents' wards are safe. In Niger State, the recent attack that just happened, the governor actually faulted the school and said the school is at fault for, not being a watchdog enough or something like that. What should communities do about this whole faulting, and who is to be blamed and who
You
is
see,
not?
it's not right to, when something bad happens like that, you begin to point accusing fingers, because the responsibility of the school, I mean, a teacher's responsibility is not to be looking through the window to check who is coming and who is not coming. Is to focus on the child, because I mean, in education you have what is called classroom management. You have to understand whether, based on the body language, whether the students are following up or following what you're teaching and all that. So it's not the responsibility of the teachers or whatever. The governor, in his right, may have a point, may have a case, and maybe certain things should have been set up and it was not done. Yes. But for me, at the heat of the matter, that is not what you should raise. If you notice that certain things are not in place, you can as well mention that this thing should be put, or give an instruction that it should be put. Those things should be addressed. But I still feel that we have to be more intentional about education, because education is about the generation coming, and it's about the capacity of this generation to run with the vision of the previous generation, because that's basically what it is. And so it's unfortunate that these kind of things are happening in Niger, Nasarawa, Kebbi, and all that. It is unfortunate, but like I said, we need to prioritize it. These people, our leaders need to begin to see these people as their own children. If it were your child, what would you do? What would you do differently? What kind of statement would you want to make to these bandits that never again should they try that kind of thing? So those are the kind of, like I said, they need to go hard on these guys to nip this thing on the bud. It's not necessarily a time for us to say, oh, this person is at fault, that person is at fault. I mean, the number of initiatives of government that has actually failed. So people did not kill the government and say, or block the street and say government did not, for instance, the homeschool feeding program. What was the performance of that? To what extent? How did that last? How did we fare in that regard? So, like I said, it's not about blaming. It's about, okay, what do we do and how do we solve this problem once and for all?
Indeed, it's about how we solve this problem at once. Just before we go further into education a threat and what, how education is being a threat and why the system failed, why there are a lot of dropout and solutions to that, we'll take a short break. More coming your way. Thank you for staying with us on that short break. You have been watching 360 Youth Dialogue here on Third Eye Africa TV. I've had a wonderful discussion with Joshua Arogunyo. I hope I pronounced that well.
Yeah, you did.
And we have been talking about education a threat, when the system failed the youth, that's why the youth drop out. I mean, there's a lot of dropouts going on right now in our education system. And we've said a lot about youth education a threat, not just insecurity. We're seeing our curriculum, we're seeing other social risk, other social issues, learning poverty, you said, and then the cliche of school na scam and all that cliches that trend on social media. Aside from the recent blow on education that threatens our security and Nigeria's education, Nigeria struggled to deliver good education system, good education curriculum. Taking on systemic failure, has the curriculum truly prepared young Nigeria for current jobs and recent, trends?
No. That's the direct answer. Direct answer is no, and of course there are reasons for that. But nevertheless, we should also know that we are on the right track. You don't compare. They say a one-eyed man in the midst of blind men is king. We shouldn't compare ourselves with other blind people.
Blind people, you mean which category?
So I'm saying that we shouldn't compare ourselves with people who are not at our level. Rather, when we want to compare ourselves, we should compare ourselves with the best.
Yes.
So when you compare Nigeria with the best, you will see that we are not faring well at all. However, if you compare Nigeria with other maybe African countries, as the case may be, other maybe Asian countries, you will say, oh, Nigeria is doing very well. But the point is that we have to be the best. We should be giants of Africa, because there are a lot of countries in Africa, within Africa, that are doing far better than Nigeria in terms of education, even at university level. I mean, if you check any of the platform you use to check the best universities in Africa, top 10. If a Nigerian university makes the list, it should be maybe Covenant University, University of Lagos, or University of Ibadan. These are the three universities that will likely make a top 10. And that would be like 8, 9, 10, or 9, 10. Because we are not even in the top 5. And you have 3 universities from South Africa making top 5. 3 making top 5. So my point is that in terms of the curriculum meeting the needs, no, our curriculum is not meeting the needs because our curriculum is still archaic, and it depends on where you're looking at it from, because the primary level curriculum is not the same with the university level. My particular take is at the university level. Why is the university level? I am particular about 2 areas: primary level and university level. Primary level because that's like the formative years of the child, and so the kind of instruction you need to give that child is such that will make that is the makeup. That's the foundation of that child. And so for me, the instruction level at that point in time should focus more on morals and values. At university level, I am concerned about the curriculum at the university level because that's a certification point. At that point in time, when that child or that student leaves that university, he is said to be a professional in that field.
Yes.
He becomes employable to work as a professional in that field. And so I'm very concerned about that level. So now if you look at it, compare the 2 levels, especially starting from the university level, the curriculum has a lot of things put in it. I have seen some aspect of it. It tries to capture maybe, 1 or 2 significant things about modern day realities. But for me, I'll give a classic example. By now, we should not have Department of Computer Sciences. Computer science should not be a department. It should be a faculty on its own. Because under that faculty, you cannot have Department of AI, Department of Robotics, Department of Computer Engineering, you cannot break down computer science of before. It's not the computer science of now. Computer programming. A department on programming that will teach you the different programming languages. We have plenty programming languages. The computer science the way computer science is before is not the way computer science is now. So it is necessary for us to review the curriculum to make it more, for 2 things. 1, to make it more true to life with current day realities. Secondly, to make it more practicable. Because one of the things that is missing in our curriculum is the aspect of practice. Practice is severely missing. So most times you see how many universities in Nigeria has, for instance, an AI lab, a programming or an incubator lab where ideas. Shouldn't it be that there are certain students who are doing certain research and then they came up with this solution? For me, we write project every year in Nigeria, and I have not seen it translate into a hands-on solution or something that you say, oh, this person holds the patent for this solution. This innovation is one student that came up with it as his PhD thesis or as his master's thesis or as he was doing his research, he stumbled on this solution. We don't see that. Why? Because we don't have the materials to work with. So the disconnect between our PhD research that translates into innovations, into solutions, shows that our curriculums are not necessarily hands-on. Even if it is stated in the curriculum that we need to have practicals or states that is captured there, but the university don't have those facilities. We don't see those facilities available. And even when those facilities are available in the universities, maybe let's say a functional GIS lab as an example, the manpower to operate it and to translate those, to bring out solutions and innovations out of it, to teach these students how to use these things and how to turn them into innovative solutions. It's not there. So there is a very, very strong disconnect. Of course, part of it is because our university system is underfunded. Take that with all, I say that with all sense of responsibility. It's unfortunate that our university system is underfunded. We don't have the investment. We don't make the investment we need to make for our university system to be able to even compete with universities across the world. And then, of course, the remuneration system. A professor, how much is the salary of a professor after many years of research and all that? So because of that, what you have is a system that the lecturers are thinking of second means, third means of income, and then are not focusing on their primary assignment, which is to impact knowledge. And so these are the reasons why you have that gap. So the curriculum in itself is not comprehensive enough. It's not catching the the everyday realities, because if it does, it will be seeing innovative solutions. We'll be seeing solutions coming out from the universities direct. We should see University of Ibadan has launched this new app that helps us to solve this. it's unfortunate. I mean, this is how my imagination about the university system is that if the society is in chaos, the university system is supposed to bring the solution. If we are in a recession, we should hear economics professors from the university coming to tell us how we should live our lives to navigate through recession and how government should begin to take progressive steps, step by step by step. But unfortunately, the university system that we have is not like that.
You know, what we normally see from our university system, even if there's like a creation of something or an innovation, it's just a prototype, like copy and
Yeah, so usually, so it now ends up on the shelf. We don't know how to mass produce those technologies, those innovations, and make it, productive at scale. Yes, I must give credit that many universities have come up with solutions, to certain problems, but they are resting on the shelf. Nobody to take them over. No, and that also shows that there is, because for you to get the dividends of education, it's not just education in itself. Education in itself cannot stand alone. You need to also connect with private sector. You need to connect with institutions. It is that collaboration between institutions and academia. It's more like they call it the gown and the ground. That will help facilitate and fast track the scaling, the upscaling of some of those ideas, those innovations. Imagine if, for instance, a university, maybe a department of nutrition and dietetics is working with, let's say, a food nutrition company that produces maybe baby food. And seeing how they can fortify this food to make it more, fortified for children, have improve the nutrients for babies. Imagine how that would look like, because it's more like the school is doing a research and it comes up with the solution and then gives it to this industry, and this industry mass produces it, and then of course acknowledge that the idea is from this
from the
university,
institution.
but they are helping to mass produce. So that connection is not there.
Rightly said. And then you talked about funding. I would like to say add that when it comes to funding, I feel like our funding for school, education, health sector, they're all channeling down to security, looking at how security is taking like the big chunk of
the budget.
our budget. And I don't know if that's what is distracting our government from seeing how important education is.
No, it's not a distraction. Yes, security is a pressing issue, but it's not necessary. It's not a distraction. There are other things that are very, very important, because you cannot compromise because you are trying to fix the current and then compromise the future. That's no more sustainability. Sustainability is that you are trying to conserve the resources of today without and use it in a way that it does not compromise the future use of that same resource. So if we channel all our energy to security and forget about education and health, then it means that in 10 years' time, we will still come back and fight that same insecurity, because there will be no jobs, and the same people who we would have trained and equipped to, just like Babs Fafunwa said, that education is a system of instruction given to an individual to make him useful to himself and the society in which he lives. So it means that if we don't do that in such a way that that child finds himself, it's like socialization, to understand his role and responsibility and how he can contribute to the society. And it means that if we're fighting insecurity, at the end of the day, we still come back to still fight it, because the other aspect that's supposed to go hand in hand, it's not going hand in hand.
Okay, let's talk about technology here. We've said a lot about technology, AI, innovation. Do you think it has a negative aspect to, to young people when it comes to dropout level? A lot of students would rather learn from YouTube, AI, use technology for their own benefit. Why should I go to school when I'm already a billionaire from YouTube, making money on social media platforms?
So every technology, there are different school of thoughts about how, the social good that technology does. Those who say that it is bad, those who say it is good, and those that are indifferent. For every technology that you see, there is a social good it does, there's a good it does, and it also comes with its adjoining consequence. And so these are what some of the, distraction to school is a consequence. It's one of the consequences of some of this technology. The preference of being a quote unquote content creator, as against going to pharmacy school system to do that, is also shows you that there's also the distraction of social media and using social media, but of all technologies, they are the same. So I will not say that it is the downside of it, because the thing is that technology in itself will not corrupt you as an individual. You will choose to what extent you want to allow technology to rule over your life. That's how it works. So, for instance, people who rely on, for instance, ChatGPT as an example, that everything they want to do, even if they want to reply an email or reply a text message, they will ask AI to help them respond. Is to what extent you allow technology have control over you, because one of the things you have to also understand with some of these technologies, not all, but some of these technologies, that it also has a way of getting you addicted. And so the thing about addiction is that the more you are hooked to it, the more it's good for the inventor of that technology. Exactly. And so it's the subtle unintended consequence. It's not, Facebook's intention is not to make you addicted to Facebook. That's not Instagram's desire for you, but you could, and if you get addicted to it, it's good for them. So you have to understand how technology works. So it's about finding that balance as an individual to use technology to your own good, use it to your advantage, and not allow it to control you. So, I mean, you can just decide to say, okay, I don't want to touch my phone, I want to pay attention. And unfortunately, this is where we're going to have to, the challenge of the future is going to be human connection. Because we are losing touch already with human connection. I've been in a place where I got into a hall and I saw everybody in that hall, they were all heads down, holding their phones. Everybody. It was just, I should have taken a picture of that. That's, you can just imagine you enter into a hall, people sitting on your left, on your right, and everybody were on their phones. No human connection. And what you would have expected is that it was in that kind of place you should say, hey, hi, how are you doing? I like your suit. What's your name? Where do you work? And exchange and have that human connection, and then meet people and, but everybody were with their phone. So it's a thin balance, but I would not say it's necessarily a disadvantage, because technology in itself is not designed as a disadvantage to society. It is meant to solve a problem, but you are responsible for how you use technology. That's why even certain things they'll tell you use responsibly. So exactly. It's your responsibility to determine to what extent you're going to allow that to take a hold of your life.
That's right. Technology, it's the user that determines if it's bad or it's good. The youth would determine if technology, they can add it to learn better than drop out entirely and depend holistically on AI or whatever technology. Still on systemic failure, ASU has given the federal government an ultimatum for strike and all that. Do you agree that this has also caused the whole major dropout among young people?
No, I will not say it has caused dropout, but I will say it has caused people not to be necessarily interested in going to universities, especially federal government universities, either federal government or state government universities, because you are almost certain that there will be strike one way or the other. And it's unfortunately so. So preference now will go for private institutions, because 4 years is 4 years, 5 years, 5 years is 5 years, or 4 years is 4 years, 5 years is 5 years, as the case may be. So this is how I look at it. I feel like ASO has a legitimate axe. You cannot wish that away. I was on a platform with the ASO chairman, and they asked me for my opinion. I said, for me, as far as I'm concerned, ASO is right. They're making a demand. It's a legitimate demand, and for them, if you look at the kind of life these lecturers are living, you will understand their plight, that they are not making an illegitimate demand. Government needs to fulfill its own responsibility to the demand, and it's a legitimate claim. However, it's unfortunate that it has consequence on us, because whether you like it or not, the academic calendar will not be altered because there was an ASU strike. And that is where the pain is. As a matter of fact, I remember there was a platform I was in, and I spoke with one of the executive directors of one of the top civil society organizations in Nigeria. And I told him, I said, we need to think about how to make a case for the Nigerian students to sue federal government to court. I have paid my school fees. I got admission to university. I've paid school fees. I've paid for you to teach me. Now you are owing the lecturers, or you are not fulfilling your bargain to the lecturers. Now the lecturers cannot fulfill their own responsibility to me. So it's affecting the quality of service. It's like it's a customer. I told them, I say it's a customer protection issue. Students should be able to sue. You have paid. You say I should pay school fees. I've paid. And if you pay, you should be served. But I'm not getting the service. And even at the end of the day, when you now adjust and you will meet their demands, it will not affect, or the calendar will not be altered. I have not seen that the school say, okay, because of ASU strike, we're extending the semester by 3 more weeks. They will not do that. it is in the remaining 2 weeks you will take the courses, you will write the exam, they will fix extra lectures, and so they will not so you're not stressing the student for something that is not his headache. So unfortunately, that is the reality, because like I said, at the end of the day, it still falls back. Two elephants are fighting. It's the student that still suffers at the end of the day. So the student is now forced to read and read overnight and carry extra workload that he has not planned to carry, just to be able to meet up. And then what now happens is that student is now forced to memorize. He now crams everything he can cram, goes to the exam hall, pauses it, and then forgets about it. He passes.
I mean,
but when he graduates,
paper graduate.
he's a paper graduate because he memorized it. Then when he now comes to, you're a graduate of economics. What is microeconomics? I've forgotten. That's what you get at the end of the day, because there's no time for practice. There's no time for application of those knowledge. So, yes, ASU strike is legitimate, but I mean, it's still government that has to answer them, because unfortunately, at the end of the day, the students will pay for it.
That's true. Let's talk about consequences. You already mentioned that in 10, 20 years, excuse me, excuse me. Let's talk about consequences. You mentioned that in 10, 20 years from now, would be battling with the nuisance that the government would have to be facing because of dropout.
Yeah.
What does dropping out actually mean for young people's, like young person's future right now?
So it's about admittance into school. There's a word for it, not admission, but it's not admittance into school. There's a word for it. A number of people who enter into the school. Then there's school retention, number of people who remain in school to see school through to the end. Yeah, so that's where the gap will be. And so the dropout are usually consequential. So for instance, in the Southeast, usually dropout is usually at JS3 or SS3. That's the peak level of dropout. So a young guy drops out at JS3 and then he wants to start the WABOY, go into the WABOY system, or at SS3 after he writes his WAEC and goes to serve a master too, because he wants to go into business. So he doesn't then continues to university. So that's where the dropout happens. And of course, if you also understand the cultural dynamics, you understand why that dropout is happening at those levels. Generally in northern Nigeria, it is an entry issue. Access to education. So sometimes they don't access education. They are not willing. In many cases, some are willing, but because of the hostile environment, or even sometimes there are no teachers in that environment where the school is, because the school has teachers, but there's teacher absenteeism, so teachers don't come to the school. So what you see is that at 10 o'clock, you see the school when they are doing assembly, but once it's 10 o'clock, the students are playing up and down. So that's what happens. So at the end of the day, you have people who they call themselves primary 6 students, but they cannot write their names, and all those kind of things that we see. So in terms of dropouts, and then of course, sometimes at the university level, you see some form of dropouts, which are usually either due to economic situations, a loss of a breadwinner like a father or a mother can affect a student, and then he's forced to drop out of school. So those kind of dynamics exist. There's a level of control that government can, I mean, like I said, sorry that I keep saying government. It's not that I have to say government, but it is that it's one of the things that government is supposed to do is to create the enabling environment. It's the environment. So at the university level, government has done something which I must applaud at the university level to curb dropout, and that is the school loan.
Yes.
So it's a good initiative to help. Okay, even if you don't have money, you can take a loan from government and run through your academics, and then you pay when you get a job after you graduate. That's a very excellent project, right? But how do we address that of secondary school and primary school, right? Because it's not even about that. Is that a student from secondary school, after he finishes school by 2 o'clock or 2:30, as the case may be, he needs to come home to come and carry banana to go and hawk on the street for him to get some change to give daddy and mommy for him to go to school the following day. So what do you expect of that child, at the end of the day? So there are a lot of social investments that we need to make. I mean, investment in social protection is very, very critical. We need to invest in social protection, whatever it's going to be, either as a conditional cash transfer, as a way of curbing dropout, to say, okay, we will add you to our register of beneficiaries for our cash transfer. However, the condition is that your child must remain in school. Those kind of innovations are, I will consider them very, very good ideas that government can decide to explore. There are other things that government can explore to, using the homegrown school feeding program as a feeding program to make sure that students, retainership in school, retention in school is maximized. At least trying to reduce dropout to the barest minimum. So there are a lot of things that can be done, but of course it is not necessarily in the responsibility of the teachers. What government can do is to make sure that teachers are there to teach. If teachers are there to teach, if the student knows that when he goes to school he's going to meet a teacher, teacher will teach him, and then he comes back home.
Indeed, you've already pointed out what the government can do, and to add that up, a lot of hands have been pointed towards parents, broken homes and all that. What role can the parents play to ensure that dropouts are reduced?
So they are agents of socialization. I mean, the school, the family is the first agent of socialization, and so family's responsibility is to make sure that not only consolidate on the effort of the school or the educational institutions. We need to encourage parents to see the value of education, that it is not necessarily work, but that the child's education is going to make the child understand himself and understand the environment in which he lives, so that he can contribute significantly to the environment in which he lives. So parents have a huge role to play. Of course, it will help in terms of distraction, because if a parent understands the importance of education, when the child is distracted, the parent will be able to curb that, to say, hey, you are being distracted. Stop playing football. Hey, it's not time to play football. This is time for you to do your homework, and help, complement the effort that the teachers or the educational institutions are playing. So I think it's more of an awareness thing. We need to create more awareness and sensitize parents on their responsibility and their role as an agent of socialization, and as an agent that complements what the educational institutions are doing.
Thank you so much on that. You've spoken so well. Thank you so much for coming on 360 Youth Dialogue. We really appreciate your presence here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, to our wonderful viewers, you've heard it. Education, school is not scam. Let me say that in pidgin English. School no be scam. Just so you know, let's end that cliche of, putting school na scam, which at the end of the day affects the youth and how they respond and drop out of school. And we've had a wonderful conversation here, a lot, where we talk about the philosophy of education in Nigeria. And in 10, 20 years, we hope that Nigeria's education system will not be the same narrative where we talk about dropout and all that. And with that, thank you so much for joining us here on 360 Youth Dialogue. My name is Juliet Ora. Bye for now.